Hi, Julie.
Hey, Joe.
Long time no see.
I know. Can you see me, by the way?
Yeah.
Okay, I can't. Oh, there. Okay, fixed it. Yeah, what did you think of Afrose's assessment today?
We're recording.
Oh, right. Thank you for the reminder. Let's see.
I do have this weird thing happening where my the view of people is on one screen and there's another screen opening up too. I have 3 screens here, so
Do you have 3 separate devices?
I have 2 monitors and my laptop, and parts are always popping up on the laptop now that haven't done that before, and I must have changed something in the settings, but
Right. Does it, so you have like one computer screen, but it crosses 3 monitors?
Yep.
Got it. That's not bad.
you never have enough space.
Sounds like you've got the command center going on over there.
That's what I call it. So John Eric wants a continuance, yes?
Yep. They want to go to April 6th. So that's 3 more weeks. So, and I don't know anything else yet for that meeting. Nothing major anyway, but we still have another week for applications to come in.
Okay.
And
And we're doing February 2nd and 16 meetings, minutes tonight.
yes. Why didn't we do the February 2nd minutes at the, I think we did.
We
I
did?
think we did them. Gretchen can let us know.
Well, they would be in the 16th minutes.
Right.
Or should be. Minutes. It was tabled.
Oh,
I don't remember why.
I don't remember why either. That's odd. Oh. Okay. How are the doggies over there?
They're good.
Yeah.
2 of them are here.
Oh, good.
How's Louis?
Louis good. He stays the same all the time. He still wants to lick everyone's faces and,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Well, it's good some things don't change.
make a lot of noise. Yeah, it is. It is.
Now all we need is members.
Right. I talked to Steve for a while on the phone today.
Okay.
Give him a few updates on some of the stuff that we were talking about.
And there he is.
Hi, Steve.
Hello, Stephen.
Hello.
Joe, you called the members and the members showed up.
I know. Well,
Hi, Paul.
Hello.
hi, Paul.
Hi, how we doing?
Good.
We're here.
Yeah. And Steve is here too, I see.
Yeah, no hiking today.
Oh,
Oh.
what, too nice of a day?
Yeah, why not?
Well, I had some other things I had to do.
There are other things.
Well, unfortunately, there's things sneak in there every now and then. So,
Like you have to call the conservation administrator.
oh, that was on the list, and then we're having a bathroom redone, so we had to go look at some of that and
Yeah.
Yep.
things I don't really want to do. But
Right.
you know.
Have you all been getting vaccinated? Anyone have a vaccine yet?
Oh, yeah.
I had my first one.
Awesome.
I had my second one.
I've
Awesome.
had two.
Oh, that's great.
Paul, did you do Moderna or Pfizer?
Pfizer.
Did you get sick after the second one?
For like a day and a half, I had a little bit of a headache and my legs were sore.
Yeah,
but-
muscle aches, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but it was, it certainly wasn't bad. Certainly
Yeah.
better than getting the virus.
Yes.
Would
Yeah, it was,
imagine.
the second one was not pleasant to me. At
Oh,
least for a
really?
day,
Oh,
so.
Did you have a sore arm too?
Yeah, that was the least of my worries.
Yeah.
yeah,
Wow.
Every muscle aches, chills,
yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
no fever though.
That means it's working, right?
Right, yeah.
That's what they say.
Oh, maybe I won't have the second one.
Did you get the Moderna?
No, I had the Pfizer.
No.
Yeah.
Paul's the first person I've heard that had a reaction to the second Pfizer one, so.
Okay. Yeah. All right, are you guys seeing the Conservation Commission slide, public
Yeah.
comment slide?
Yep.
So as I said, Steve, I'm bailing before the last item.
Check them.
So are you gonna
Yeah.
disconnect, Joe, and come back in, or what do you want to do? Are you just gonna disconnect because it's the end of the meeting?
I'm just gonna leave, and if you think I need to come
Okay.
back in, text me, but
Okay. Okay. We'll take care of everything else before
All
that.
right. I'm sure you will.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah,
Oh,
I wrote-
22 participants. Wow.
Mhm.
Oh, I see David Vine is in as a attendee.
Oh,
yeah.
all right. I'll move him over. And we've got, hold on, okay. Let me get this going here. It's like, all right, David. I'm going to promote you to panelist. Tom's raising his hand. Hold on, Tom. All right, Tom,
Yes.
did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to see if I could be seen or heard.
Oh,
Um,
can be heard.
you can be heard, but which Tom is this?
Tom Antone,
Oh, Tom, which project are you here for?
Plum Island, the erosion.
Okay, I'm going to put you on mute again. And we'll take questions when we get to that part of the agenda, okay?
Okay,
Can you
Mayor
hear
Holiday, I'm
me?
gonna promote Mayor Holiday to a panelist.
Carol
Um,
Wagon too, or Wagon.
Can you see and hear me?
Carol.
Yes. Hi, David.
Carol, you're-
Something happened to my settings. I'm not exactly sure what happened.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened, David, but you're good now, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
Oops.
Hi, Carol.
Hello, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Sounds like we've got a lot going on tonight.
So. Oh, good, Sharif. Okay, wait a minute. Wait. Okay, we have a quorum, so
All right, let's bring this meeting to order. It's the March 16th, 2021 Newburyport Conservation Commission meeting taking place on the Zoom platform. This meeting is being recorded. First item on our agenda are approval of the February 2nd, 2021 meeting minutes. I can't even remember why we tabled them.
and I don't have them up on the screen actually, because I didn't realize that we hadn't approved those yet. So,
I
That
think
was-
it had something to do with the question about the rehabilitation of one of the houses and whether it was 50% or not, and it was a $7,000 figure, and Gretchen was correct on the meeting notes.
Right.
that's right. So it was a technicality that got worked out at the end of the last meeting, right? But we hadn't voted on it yet.
It was after the meeting. So I would make a motion to accept the minutes.
Second,
All right, Paul Haley,
Yes.
Steve Moore,
yes.
Ken Warshall,
Yes.
David Vine,
Yes,
Ron DeCola,
Yes.
and Carol Wagon.
Yes.
And I vote yes. All right, next item are the February 16th, 2021 meeting minutes. Any comments, changes, etc.? Get a motion? Assuming
Motion.
there's none.
Second.
All right, Paul Healy,
Yes.
Steve Moore,
Yes.
Ken Warshall,
Yes.
David Vine,
yes,
Ron DeCola,
Yes.
and Carol Wagon,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Maybe I'll remember to say roll call vote next time. All righty, next item are the, where am I looking at this? The, well, plumb line updates are gonna equal the, I think the reservation terrace erosion presentation,
Yes.
so.
Okay, so we have with us tonight Mayor Holiday and Anders Bjarngard from GZA, who will be available. I believe also Councilor Zaid is here. But Mayor Holiday and Anders were prepared to give a short overview of the proposed project out on Reservation Terrace. So let's see, I'm going to make sure that they're unmuted. And I'll move to the draft plan. So we had a meeting last week with Mayor and Anders to go over this draft plan, which some of the neighbors have already seen in a meeting that we had by Zoom on Friday. But Anders, if you're here, or Mayor Holiday, do you want to give a little presentation?
Let me just start briefly, and first let me just hold on one sec. There we go. First of all, let me just express my apologies for not sending out the Zoom to any members of the Conservation Commission for Friday. There's just been so many meetings and so many moving parts on this. It just was an oversight on my part, and I apologize for that. The meeting was recorded so that it is available to view, but we've been before you to talk about super sacks, and they did not, they certainly did help in terms of the damage that could have occurred out on the Reservation Terrace area, but they certainly did not perform the way we had anticipated. Even though we finally were able to get the state DCR at the table to talk about what has happened for years on this property, even though we attempted that probably 5-6 years ago when we brought legislators and the world out to walk with the site when we still had a dune there. And it's unfortunate that we didn't move faster at that time, because we wouldn't be in the situation where we are in. Even a year ago, November, when I had predicted we would be here, brought MEMA and the state and DEP and the world to a meeting in the conference room at the wastewater treatment plant, and then a site walk. And, you know, everyone stood there saying, oh, this is so awful. But it was like, and so that's when we began doing research, talking to Secretary Theoharis about the need for some type of structure. We're very grateful to the Conservation Commission for the emergency cert and allowing us to put the super sacks in. As we were approaching this major storm, we had begun pretty high level conversations with our state legislative team, Lieutenant Governor, Secretary Theoharis, Samantha Phillips from MEMA, and began having a series of conference calls on what's going on out here. I told them how concerned I was about this upcoming storm. And then before I knew it, Mass DOT had sent a whole crew out. They went to SBS in Salisbury, where they picked up sand and filled another 150 bags, bought more bags, and worked from early morning until late at night to put the bags in. And before the highest tide hit at 2 o'clock in the morning, many of the bags were undermined. So it was clear that we needed to do something different. So I was very pleased that the engineering staff from Mass DOT began to step up and really walk the site, pay attention. We're actively working to try and figure out a solution. And then they asked if we had a coastal engineer, and that's where Anders stepped in. I reached out to Anders and once again asked him if he could come and help us work out a different system. At first, Mass DOT was saying we need to do sheet pilings. And of course, DEP immediately said, no, that's not possible. And we know that we can't put hard structures here. So through the course of several weeks of conversations and Anders working with initially Mass DOT and then with Sumco, David Lager's group, he was formerly of Netco, who had come out many years ago and walked the site with us when we still had the dune, and now he's with Sumco. And so this is the new plan that was created by Anders, and this is an approach that is being used in Sandwich. There was a little bit of misinformation about the road that this was on. Some of the residents were concerned that it didn't hold, but that places where it did hold was where they had the core bags. There were other sections of that particular road where it didn't work. So this is what we're proposing. Mass DOT EEA has indicated that we need to do a MEPA review because of the extensiveness of this new project. And Anders, I did reach out to Undersecretary Dan Siegel and ask him, but he's on vacation. So I reached out to his, I don't know, second and asked for a contact for you in terms of being able to walk through what needs to be submitted for that MEPA review. Now, they told us it would be about a 30-day process once the application was in, which sort of surprised me because I always thought MEPA reviews took longer than that. But the one thing they did forewarn us is that they're also working on all the dredging permits, which are very, very complex and very time sensitive. So we're somehow going to be squeezed into that process. So with that being said, we were actually coming today to talk about holding the emergency cert for us to move forward. But because we need the MEPA review, there is time to submit a notice of intent, and GZA is going to file that with you also, so that you will have a chance to review that at the same time while the MEPA process is occurring. So that's sort of a quick update on, you know, where we were and how we got to where we are today. You know, they really did have a lot of damage after the February 1st storm. No question about it. It upended some of the wall, which DPS has reset, but, you know, it's the homes there and the infrastructure and the road are really, really at risk. I don't know if you've had a chance, some of you, to go out and walk the site, but it is pretty amazing and pretty critical, the situation that we are in right there. So I'm going to turn it over to Anders, who is going to walk you through this plan and, you know, answer your questions. So Anders, take it away.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. Feel free to interrupt with questions anytime. I'll try to give you a brief overview of what the proposal is here. And basically, the state had suggested that we look at a similar situation to that which was used down in Sandwich. And, you know, the conditions down there are comparable in terms of wave energy. There are some differences. But we were asked to kind of work out the details to make this approach work at Reservation Terrace. So that was our mission, and it's understood that this is a temporary effort that will help reduce damage associated with storms and high tides and wave action until the Corps' dredging project and on-beach nourishment project takes place, which is currently scheduled for the fall. Julia, if you could go, well, let me first just explain the limits here. It's a little bit hard to see, but there's a gray line. Thank you for zooming in. And it basically follows the former sandbag barrier. It goes a little bit past it on the southeast end there, down by sections E and F. And what we're doing is we're tying into the higher remnant dunes there and terminating the barrier at those locations at the north. So the overall length is about 510 feet. And one of the things here, we're using contours that were generated from Mass DOT's drone flyover. So you see some funky lines over the water. That's because they're getting reflection, and also some funky lines from structures over here. But the topo on the beach is good. So that's what we're using. And that topo indicated that we had lost, no surprise, some additional beach since the last time we surveyed out there last summer. So please note these cross sections here, A through F. I'm going to go to the profile sheet, Julia, if you would,
Yep.
and just show you what that looks like in our proposed design. So from top to bottom, you have cross sections A through F, and A and F are basically where they tie into the existing dunes. So the majority of the installation is represented by these sections in the middle, sections B through E. And what we've done here is we've created a barrier that consists of 4 to 5 core envelopes, and the core envelopes themselves, I think most of you are familiar with them, but they are basically sand-filled biodegradable fabric. There's an inner layer of jute. And then for this installation, we've got actually 4 layers of the core fiber, the coconut fiber. That's one more than Sumco usually uses, just to give them a little bit more durability. And those are typically filled in place when you're placing them below grade. In the upper right-hand corner, you can see a slight blow up of the installation. And that dashed line that slants from left to right, that's existing grade. Thank you. So everything that's shown below existing grade is dashed. So these envelopes are lined, they line the excavation and they backfill the sand. Sumco went out there and took a look at it. They feel that there's plenty of excess sand stockpiled along Reservation Terrace to fill these bags. However, the plant, they've already provided us with a unit cost to be used for exported sand if that's needed. And we're trying to hold this elevation of 14 at the top, and that's maybe not as high as we would like for overtopping protection, But to go higher with the way the beach is lowered right now would basically take another row and another pyramid. So you'd be looking at 3 more envelopes at a minimum to get up to around elevation 17. That would help a lot for overtopping, but it just expands the project to a point where you'd have to question, the cost and the fact that it's a short-term measure, whether that makes sense or not. For comparison, this is about where the super sacks ended up. It was about elevation 14. So the level of, or the amount of overtopping would be comparable to what we had with the super sacks. There will be overtopping during storms. And this is a temporary installation that would not survive a really big storm. However, it has a very good chance of buying us the time that we need to get to the Corps' major nourishment project. And then the hope would be that, or the plan would be to cover this with sand. Ideally, we'd cover it with sand before we leave. But then once the Corps does the nourishment project, to bury this and plant dune grass over it and turn it into a secondary dune that would protect the homes in the event that we get erosion. However many years from now, this problem may reoccur potentially. We're using 10-foot posts, 4 feet on center. As you go down along the shoreline, they're not pressure treated because of the temporary nature of this. And one of the things that the mayor and I have been talking about is what to do with the existing concrete blocks, that not any of the new ones, but the old historical ones, as well as the sandbags. And, part of the project would be to reclaim whatever super sacks we could, and then take whatever's left, empty the sand out, and throw all of the bags in a dumpster and get rid of them. Now the blocks, I think we could potentially, depending on the alignment, we could put the blocks back where they were, and then that might provide some scour protection in place of the, Julia, if you could go back to the cross section again, I'd appreciate it. So in that front core envelope there on the lower right-hand side of the profile, that's there primarily for scour protection. And that's pretty much where the alignment of the old concrete blocks were. So if that works, and we're just talking about this now, that would be, that would eliminate the need for that one core envelope, which would be great.
So these bags are going to be on Reservation Terrace? I thought they were going to go in front of the concrete.
They basically go, well, it depends where you are. Sorry, Julie, I have to go back to the plan view. If you're up near Reservation Terrace between 73rd and 71st Street, they're seaward of Reservation Terrace. And that's because there's a water line there that runs on the seaward side of Reservation Terrace that we have to stay away from. Okay. But once you move to the northwest, because of how low the beach is, we've pulled that barrier in to take advantage of that sloping shoreline to try to get as much height as we can. And that location there is on the paper street, basically, Reservation Terrace. There's city-owned strip along there, but we're kind of hugging it on the landward end, close to the private property. At times, this alignment goes onto DCR property at the northwest end and at the southeast end, and therefore we have to get a construction access permit from DCR, which is what kicks in the MIPA requirement because it's a state permit. And so yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Well, I thought right around 73rd Street, I thought the concrete blocks were basically right on the edge of the pavement.
They are there, yes, you're right. And they're more aligned with the back of our barrier.
Okay.
So if you see northwest of 73rd, they're along the front side. But then as we have to swing out to miss the water line there, they ended up on the back. And I would propose that we would put the blocks back in approximately their previous location, but underneath the middle of the sand barrier in that location. So if you want to go back to the profile, Julia, one more time, that might take that supplemental envelope that you see on the bottom in the middle, and that could be replaced by one of the old concrete blocks.
So what would be supporting of your 3 rows of sand, the left-hand one, which if the concrete blocks are where the bottom is, what would be supporting that upper one?
The upper one on the left there would be
Yeah.
supported by sand.
Okay.
Wouldn't the core bags be more stable than the blocks in a situation like that? Because they're longer and heavier?
They're not heavier, but they are continuous. And this is one of the big differences between this approach and the super sack approach, is these are stitched at the ends together, and then they're held in place by the posts. So you're not as likely to get sort of the individual movement and undermining as you did with the super sacks.
Yeah, that was my concern with them not getting undermined like the blocks do and fall
Right.
forward.
And Anders, are these stitched together as well? Like the 5 sacks or envelopes we see, are those stitched together?
You mean, yeah, I think I know what you're saying. Sumco recommends that they get tied together rather than stitched together. So the concept would be to put a rope or rope cord underneath them all and tie them off as one mass unit.
Okay, so there's some attachment to this whole.
Yeah, that's the stitching isn't quite strong enough. Like if you look at that top envelope, if that has a big force on it, the stitching, it'll just tear. So Sumco recommends wrapping it in a standard rope, not nylon rope, but more of the jute type of rope that the older style that you used to see anyway, and just wrapping that around the whole bunch of envelopes.
And what you're saying is that right now there's excess sand, in the street and, that whole area, such that these will be filled? Because what you're showing is it's sticking out of the existing surface.
Right.
So that would imply, that you're going to need more sand.
Correct. The ones below the surface, you'd put the sand that you excavate back in, and then so anything shown above grade would have to come from elsewhere. And there is quite a bit of stockpiled sand out there. But as I mentioned, Sumco, actually, they just gave me a cost today to import sand, and that they'd be ready to do that. It's $30 a cubic yard. So per row, per core envelope at 500 feet, that's about $9,000 for importing the sand, times however many envelopes we end up with here. But we don't want to take away, we don't want to, it's the old expression, steal from Peter to feed Paul. We don't want to do that.
Are the bags also attached to the post?
No, they're not. What happens with these bags is that they kind of expand and bulge around the posts. So that kind of holds them in place in that direction.
And the posts are 4 feet apart?
Correct.
And how long is each bag? Or
40 feet.
okay,
And then again, stitched together at the ends.
right. And stitched to each other also.
No, they're just wrapped with rope.
tied tied to each other. Yeah, I guess is there any concern if you put the blocks in front of the bags, if the block gets undermined, that it might, on its way forward, it might tear through the bag behind it?
I guess when it gets to that point, or if it gets to that point, there would be some concern about that. Yes.
Yeah, why it seems like it makes more sense to, at least where you can have the blocks behind the bags. So they're like another backstop,
Yeah.
where they are now. But if you got them in front, if the blocks get undermined, you don't want to trash the bag behind it.
Yeah, I mean, it is a temporary installation. The core envelopes, they can only take so much.
Right.
And hopefully that kind of scour wouldn't happen until it had served its purpose. But yeah, I mean, it's Mother Nature. We don't know. We don't know what kind of storms we're going to have between now and when that nourishment takes place. So one of the good things about the posts is that it does hold the envelopes in place so that if they do get undermined, they kind of drop down. They don't go seaward, which is a real good thing. And sometimes these installations are looked at when the core envelope fails. And when I was speaking with DCR on this, who we've also been coordinating with, in addition to Mass DOT and Sunco, their view on this kind of an installation is that the core envelopes will fail and they deposit their sand, and then you go back in and you put in a new one, and that's just sort of an ongoing process. That's not what we're looking to do here. This is a temporary installation.
Right.
Anders, because it's a temporary installation, and we really need it to get us to the fall, if indeed the river is dredged in the fall and the sand can be put on the beach, that would sort of, take the place of the use of these, I guess, at that point. So I guess my question is, given now that we know that the MEPA review process is necessary, what's your experience with getting through that, and how quickly do you think that can go so that we don't waste, I mean, it's March already. You need these things to do some good before the fall, otherwise it's not worth it.
Yeah, to me, with that requirement, it's basically, I mean, we have king tides in late April that are quite high. So other than that, I think, given the MEPA schedule, we're talking about mostly the fall is really the concern, the early fall.
Prior to whenever we could get that sand on the beach, that's what we're most worried about, is getting through that sort of season.
I think by the time we get through MEPA and get this built, it's probably, we're into May, right? So
Yep.
we're into the calm summer accretion mode.
Right.
And MEPA, I mean, it's a very unusual situation, but for MEPA to turn something around in 30 days, that seems very optimistic.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's a special situation, and that's why, as the mayor alluded to, I'm trying to talk to. I want to understand specifically what it is that we need to do so we can bang it out and get this on track.
Well, and if it helps the MEPA process to have the commission have already reviewed a notice of intent and issued an order of conditions, then obviously that can take place first.
Yeah, that could be helpful.
The other thing I think that we need to keep in mind is that, it's a very aggressive schedule to get through the 9 or 12 permits that are required for this dredge project. And the Army Corps reminded me, unfortunately, that in the last dredge project they did in 2011, that they had a bit a bid problem, and that the whole dredge was delayed a year to 11. And I had just come in at that point. So that there are concerns that, you know, everything has to go according to clockwork in terms of the permitting review to get to the point where they're ready to dredge. And so that's another reason why I think we still need to go forward, even though we have to do the MEPA review. And if we get through the April king tide and, you know, get this in May, I mean, there's a chance that it could be delayed. And I just want to have some type of protection out there for the water and sewer infrastructure, the road and the homes.
Anders, is there any other windows or that you might have a problem with, marine fisheries or anything like that, as far as doing the work in the summer?
Well, there's plover season.
Need a plover monitor.
And I don't think we would, Dave, because we're not working below high tide line or mean high water.
That's right. Well, I guess the MEPA project or the filing, you'll get more input on that.
Even through the notice of intent process, we'll be getting some input on some of those things, I think.
I had a question. I was wondering if, you know, in case, you know, the dredging projects do get held up, you know, for much longer than we expected, is there like any backup plan to this core bag thing that could be, so that it could be increased upon to get us through next winter?
Well, I think that's definitely a conversation that needs to happen with DCR, you know, in the
Yeah.
event that this, you know, the Army Corps the dredging project is delayed.
Right.
You know, there is tremendous effort and support on the part of the state and our legislators who are working diligently to move this forward in terms of all the permitting process. So I'm hoping, you know, but again, you just don't know. It was a bid protest last time that delayed the project a year. And I'm hoping that that doesn't happen this time.
And if
But I just meant in case the worst did happen.
We go back to DCR, Paul.
Design work.
I think we go back to DCR and Anders and say, okay, you need to replace a couple of these core bags, you know, and to get us through, and we just add more.
Right. Okay.
When with a little help from Mother Nature, if she takes it easy on us, you know, these could survive. In Sandwich, there's a little confusion about how well they performed down there, but they hung in there pretty well for 3 to 4 years.
Oh.
And so depending on what gets thrown at this thing, I mean, it could make it, you know.
Yeah.
Well, there were some core bags installed down in Newbury a number of years ago. I don't know how long they lasted. Do you?
They're still there.
Yeah.
They've taken a little bit of a toll, but they're still there.
Yeah.
They've been there quite a while.
And we look at those that off of Dr. Hermani's house, remember?
Yeah.
We put all the
53rd.
core bags in there too, and they're loaded with sand at this point, and those are still intact.
That's all the sand that was going down the river.
I know. It should not have left Reservation Terrace area.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so what do you think is, Anders, when should the commission expect to get you on the agenda with a notice of intent?
Is it this Friday or next Friday is your filing deadline for the next meeting?
This Friday is the filing deadline for the April 6th meeting.
Okay, all right. That's what we're gonna shoot for.
Okay.
Yep.
You can just communicate with me on your schedule for that
Okay.
by email.
Counselor Z, did you want to add anything at this point?
Thank you, Mayor. Nope, I'm just here observing, and I just was going to be available to answer any questions, non-technical in nature, but I attended the neighborhood meeting that was held last Friday and have some of the similar questions from residents about the longevity and durability of this solution. So those are things, ongoing discussions, but I appreciate the commission taking the time to have what turned out to be an early look, which is not a bad thing, and hopefully gives you a heads up of where things might be headed. So that's always a good thing.
Is that one other question about the posts? Do you think they're buried deep enough if we get scour?
I do. If it were a permanent installation, I might take them deeper, but I think it's appropriate for this. I'll be honest, it's not like we did our typical engineer stuff and looked at the force on the, it's really not conducive to that kind of quantitative design. It's more of a judgment thing. So I will say that we took them 2 feet deeper than Sumco was initially thinking. So
Okay.
I think we're okay there.
How are they installed, Anders?
They're driven down, I believe, in Sandwich, I believe they used a bucket of a skid steer, but I think in this case, because we're going a little bit deeper, they're going to use some type of a post driver. I'm not familiar with the piece of equipment exactly, but.
And that will be from the beach side, or are they gonna be working in the dunes anywhere to do this?
No, there's no dune left there except for the ends. And when they get to the ends, they can work along the barrier and back out to avoid tracking up any existing dune. But they will be on the beach. But, that's just intertidal and wave run up zone at this point.
When the commissioners have all finished with questions, we do have 3 members of the public who have their hands raised.
Now 4 and now 5. All right. Well, why don't you let the first one in, Julie?
Okay, so
Come on,
Anne McGoran, I'm going to allow you to speak. You can unmute yourself. Anne?
Wait, all right, is it on? Turn that
It
off.
is.
Hi. Okay, so I have a question, which is, I live on 69th Street, and the last storm, there was a barricade that was put up, right? So when that barricade stopped some water, it also caused more water to come in our direction. So down 69th Street, there was a ton of water at high tide. And I am concerned that the whole water and sewer system issue is going to happen on 69th Street if you do not extend those barriers to 69th Street. I mean, to me, it's basic physics.
Yeah, I went out and took a look at that, and there is evidence clearly that it overtopped in that area between just a little bit northwest of 69th Street to 71st Street. And
I have video of it coming down.
yeah,
And I'm about midway down 69th Street, and it actually came into my yard and it actually flooded part of my yard. So that whole stream of water is coming because you're putting a barricade, you're putting a structure there. So when the water comes in, it's going to go to the left and it's going to go to the right. And what's going to happen is it's going to erode the berm, and you're going to cause more problem further down Reservation Terrace and 69th Street. So when you're considering this project, I suggest that you bring it as far as 69th Street. Otherwise, you're going to have a whole new set of problems.
Okay, well,
So let me just explain one thing here that's kind of maybe puts the big picture into perspective. The height of the existing dune between 71st Street and 69th Street is about elevation 14. That's the same elevation as the top of this barrier. So if we were to extend the barrier there, we would probably want to go higher, right? To have it do something. And if we go higher there, then what do we do with the rest of it? Because the area that's really going to get pounded is between 71st and 73rd and just to the northwest of that. And water will overtop that and run down 71st and Reservation Terrace to 69th. So it's kind of, I appreciate the concern and it is an issue.
But the sacks that you had on the last storm was some sort of barrier, clearly not a great barrier. But because of those sacks, that is the reason that the water flowed the way it did down our area. So if you make a more solid structure, what's going to happen is the sand that is protecting us right now is only going to erode, and it's going to be a bigger issue for all of us. Whereas if you could extend it further, and I don't know what 14 means, but I don't know whether you need to go higher. I don't know exactly. All I'm saying is that if you have water flowing straight against a structure, the power is going to disperse to the left and to the right. It's going to eat away those dunes, and that water is going to flow right on Reservation Terrace and 69th Street. And our houses and our water and sewer system.
Can I suggest something, Anders, that, because I definitely understand what Anne is saying and what her concern is. And I think we've looked at situations like this before where we see sort of like end scour and problems at the ends of these structures. And we typically when the Conservation Commission is reviewing a project with this type of system, we typically ask an applicant, in this case, it would be the city, to show us that that's not going to happen and to lay out in the application for the permit the explanation of, what's going to happen at either end of the system so that neighbors can be reassured and the commission can be reassured that we're not going to end up with additional problems. Is that something that you think you can incorporate into the application? And if it shows that there will be a problem, then obviously we're going to have to address that.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to do, and I don't disagree that there are end effects that are detrimental. It is a concern.
Well, we know from the last storm that what's going to happen on the end effects, because that's exactly what happened. So if you make more solid structure, it's going to happen, and it's going to happen more. Unless you protect 69th Street, unless you extend it further.
Yeah, I guess one thought would be to take the envelope and run it along the toe of the scarp at elevation 14 down to the southeast further. I guess I wouldn't want to just pile it up on top of that dune. I would want to stay off the dune and stay in front of it. And,
you know more about this than I do, but what about if it went in front of it? Would that help?
Yeah, that's what I was just referring to, putting it in front of it, meaning seaward.
Yeah. And maybe that would help protect the remaining dune, which is still there.
One of the other people who live on 69th Street wants to say something, so I'm gonna.
Yeah, hi, this is Jennifer Truesdale. I'm on 18th, 69th Street, so I'm right at the corner of Reservation and 69th Street. And I appreciate that the berm is is being measured at 14 feet tall. However, it's not at 14 feet tall all the way anymore. Like that berm was really protecting us. However, now there is a huge lower level. It is not 14 feet tall. And I'd really appreciate if you could come out and measure it at that low level where we had that breach.
Yeah, I did do that visually last Friday, and that's when I mentioned 14, that is the level without the old berm. The berm, the remnants of the berm that you see out there, that's actually 4 feet higher. That's at elevation 18.
Mhm.
So
So
when I talk about the top of the barrier, I'm talking about this new proposed barrier.
So could we put some sort of a structure bringing that 14 up to 18, since it has been protecting 69th and 67th and Reservation Terrace on this end all along?
I think those structures that they're putting in need to extend.
Yeah, to extend down, because otherwise it's just going to come down and it's going to flood Reservation Terrace from, from the other direction, but it's still going to go down and hit those same houses as well as additional.
To take the barrier that we're proposing, to take it 4 feet higher is a major undertaking.
Well, then can we take it longer across 69th so that we're protecting all of Reservation Terrace?
I think the best approach there would be to run it along the scarp in front of the dune to 14, elevation 14.
As long as we're not going to run into the same problem and worse as the last storm, that would be great. And thank you.
And just one last thing. So will there be some studies as was mentioned before about what will happen on both ends of those barriers before this is approved?
It's a pretty difficult thing to quantify and predict, but we'll do our best.
I agree it's difficult to quantify, but it's not difficult the last storm just proved exactly that. You had the Saks, and then 69th and Reservation got a lot more water than it ever did. I've lived here for years. It's the first time I've ever seen that happen. And it's because you had a solid structure and the water's eroding on our end. And even though we have a berm, it's not strong enough to overcome it. And we had a lot of water.
Well, personally, I don't think anything that was southwest of 71st Street was affected by the sand barrier. That was just overtopping the dune.
If I can get your email, I'll be very happy to show you the video. There was a lot of water that flowed right down 69th Street at high tide.
I understand that, but that's just because that there's hardly any dune left there, and it's low. It's at 14.
It's because our end of the beach was not protected by those big sandbags. Not that the other houses were properly either, but there was more water. The force of the water went through and came down our street.
Okay, we're gonna move on this.
Okay.
Thank you for your question. There is another N.
Yeah. No, I think that's the same person, I believe, with two connections. So I think we can move to Mark and Leela Wright. I've just allowed you to unmute.
Hello?
Yeah, we're here.
Okay, this is Leela Wright, 55 Reservation Terrace. I greatly appreciate the effort that's going into this, but I have to say, the theory that the white super sacks helped us at all is false. They didn't last 24 hours the second time, and the first time they managed to undermine not only the wall, but the road to the point where it's impacted my home. So, I'd be very careful in calling them a success. However, I would like to know about the next structure. And I'm a little concerned that there was a comment that it wouldn't withstand one strong storm, so I'm kind of questioning why we would be spending this kind of money if it's not going to withhold one storm. And secondly, with the history of the April storms in this area, what are we going to do if this process can't be started until after April? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good questions.
Well, we have the timeline, and this is what we have for options now.
I guess if I can kind of respond to the first part of the question, and that is that, you know, to protect against a large storm here, I mean, there's no way to do it without a hard structure, and that would have to be either a big rock revetment or a sheet pile wall. You just can't do it. I wish there was a way, but there isn't. All you can do is try to make it better and get to the point where the major nourishment takes place.
Okay, one last question in regard to where this was successful in Sandwich. Could we have an address? Because the only area we've been told it didn't last a season and it wasn't successful. So I'd just like to know if there's an address as to where this was placed and when this structure was placed previously. Thank you.
Yeah, my understanding on that is based on talking to Sumco, and it was on Salt Marsh Pond Road, and it was the two houses that failed or that were lost this past winter were numbers 112 and 114. It's my understanding. And it's also my understanding that those were not protected. 112 had no shoreline protection in front of it. The owner declined. And the 114 had some other type of protection. I'm not saying that the core, you know, envelope solution is perfect. It's not. But my understanding is that it did help quite a bit for 3 or 4 years. And this past winter, it had begun to deteriorate because it was exposed to ultraviolet radiation. So it just wasn't able to keep up. But my understanding is that it did protect homes fairly successfully, including through this past winter. I wasn't involved in the project, but I mean, I can put you in contact with the contractor.
That would be great. I'd appreciate that, Anders. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay,
Luke Shipman.
okay, Luke, you can unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you, Luke Shipman, 217 Northern. This question is for Mayor Holliday. Thank you for joining tonight. We've made quite a few sort of implicit and explicit caveats about the feasibility of some of the mid or longer term plans, whether that's the beach nourishment or the river dredge. And I can understand why we've made those caveats, but it creates an environment on the island, well, I think across the city, that is sort of ripe for everything spanning from simple confusion all the way through paranoia as it relates to the city's long-term plans for the residents on the island. And the tricky part about that is when I couple it with some of the stuff that's on the record, I'll point you to the sewer and the water and sewer meeting from July 29th of 2020, where we have the city engineer and the city planner talking about a recommendation to develop a 30-year funding regression plan for the island, recommending that the city contract legal guidance to define case law to support a cessation for all capital improvements on the island. And this general sentiment has been echoed since then at zoning board meetings, at planning board meetings. And I just want to get your perspective as to why that tone and tenor of sort of a regulated retreat seems to be the administration's approach. I'd love to hear your perspective on why why that conclusion is one that we can arrive at if we look at what's on the public record.
I think that's a very difficult question to answer in this meeting, Luke. I think that there's been some challenges with the Zoning Board of Appeals, from my understanding, in terms of the Plum Island Overlay District as and so there were some attempts to try and tighten that. There is a municipal vulnerabilities protection review program happening on the Newbury side, looking at the financial benefits of additional growth, I believe is their theme on the island. And I think that any discussion about the future of the island needs to happen with a very broad, with all residents of the island. I cannot speak. I mean, the city has not set, a steadfast goal that it's retreat, that we are stopping all development on the island. I mean, there are concerns about development. There's concerns about it being a barrier island. It's concerned about additional erosion. But have we, set forth a definitive plan in terms of what the future of the island is? Absolutely not. I think we started with our, putting together a very comprehensive resiliency plan, looking at the concerns, the hazards of a barrier island, and looking at what's happened there. Now, if there are ways that we can successfully deal with the GIR, the spur, and the jetty, and with the Army Corps, as well as rebuild this dune there, I think those are all components of a broader discussion about what is the future of the island. And I don't think, this is the right forum to talk about what the future is there. And as I said, Luke, there is no definitive plan at this point to, there's been various conversations, people who really believe that, a retreat plan is appropriate, that we should stop any major development that's out there. I mean, there are people who have that opinion, but there's no definitive legislation. And nothing will happen until there is a very, very broad discussion with all the people on the island at this point. And that's about what I can tell you, Luke. My focus right now is to try and help get this section of Newburyport on the island through the next 6 months until we can put the dredge. We also are actively working with the Merrimack River Beach Alliance and Senator Tarr on trying to work with the Army Corps on rebuilding the spur and trying to figure out how we can stop that, sort of gyre action that's happening on the base of Reservation Terrace. And those are all components of what we're trying to deal with now as we go forward. And then any future discussion about, what's going to happen on Plum Island is a much longer, much broader public conversation that needs to happen in the future.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Holiday. We're definitely not going to continue discussing, the long-term plans on Plum Island here. We're going to discuss this project and move on with that.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Maureen Adams.
Okay, Maureen, I've unmuted you if you want to unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Couple quick questions, I hope. Is this solution going all the way down to 77th Street? And will it be at 14 feet or does it taper off as you get down there? And then to follow up with Mr. Healy's question about sort of a worst case, if the dredging doesn't happen in time, can you add to these bags, to make it higher so there's no overtopping? And would you need to extend the poles at that point that hold the bags in place? Thank you.
Okay, the first question was how far down towards 77th Street? And if you can see the plan there, it goes about a little over halfway between 75th and 77th Street. And ties into an existing dune.
So down where that A is? That section?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. And does it taper down as you reach the end?
It holds its elevation at 14
Your
and
feet?
kind of goes into the dune.
June, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And your second question there, yes. So with the posts in place, if a bag tears or fails or scours and sinks, you would have the ability to go out there and put another one within it.
But if the dredging didn't happen, and I think Paul was asking that, could you add to the bags that are there and go a little higher, you know, for the winter? I'm just thinking worst case. Would you need to put larger poles in place to hold?
Yeah, you could. If you needed to, you could probably go higher.
Uh-huh, okay. I think that's what he was asking earlier. I could be mistaken. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. All right. So you're gonna make an effort to get us this by Friday,
Correct.
okay?
And I mean, I will discuss with the city the concept of extending the barrier starting tomorrow morning.
Okay.
And just how long do you think that would be? Another 100, 150 feet?
Yes, that's a very good estimate, I think, actually.
Okay. We have anything else?
Looks like we have one more hand up. Someone who hasn't spoken yet, Stan Norton.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. I'm a resident across the way at 29 Harbor Street. I'm curious, given the discussions we've just had about the feasibility of extending this temporary system, should it be required into next year, presumably past the fall, does it make sense to weigh the cost of a somewhat more persistent structure, realizing that the dredging seems fraught with all kinds of potential delays in the form of permissions, you know, maybe more contention around bidding, who knows? But we talked about, or the comment was made that it would be too expensive to get too ambitious with this temporary project. Is that really the way we should be thinking about it, or should we contemplate a middle strategy where this could survive longer in the event that the complex dredging permitting project takes actually longer than we might hope?
Well, I'll answer that, Stan. You know, we have worked with DCR, we've worked with Secretary Thea Hardy's. We looked at every possible, you know, option. We looked at floodgates, we've looked at different types of sacks, we've looked at, you know, a whole variety of options that have been placed on beaches. And the problem that we have is the intensity of the wave action. And so this approach, which, you know, we were told by DEP, we've been told by this committee, we've been told by DCR that there any other structure that involves hard structures like the steel pilings or walls are not permitted according to you know, regulations. So we came up with what we thought through all the research, which was, you know, an approach that was used in a comparable beach environment, and that, you know, I think this is our best bet, and that we can add more core bags, raise the poles if we need to, if for some reason the project is delayed. but we don't have a lot of options. That's the problem. You know, the best options we had were 5 years ago when, you know, we kept reaching out to the state to ask for their help and support, but we just couldn't get DCR to come out and really focus on, you know, what needed to happen with this property. So we really are limited in terms of what are permittable options out here. I wish we had other options, but we don't. And, you know, I think this is something that, you know, everyone seems to be getting behind, that it is, you know, is it the perfect solution? No. But it is the best option we have at this point. And
No, I
affordable.
appreciate that. I wasn't suggesting a grossly different technology, just asking if we think it would be feasible at some point to drive deeper poles, put in additional tiers of these bags. Does it make sense to think about doing that now and have some sense of backup given the exigencies of the permitting processes?
I understand. Thank you, Stan. You know, we certainly can look at that, but again, we're beholden to the state in terms of, you know, what they're willing to let us move forward and do and what they're willing to pay for. So we certainly can have that conversation.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, everybody's covered. I see B hair.
Okay. Be here, you can unmute yourself.
I'd like to ask the mayor, you indicated some concern about how much the state was willing to pay. And my question is, how much is the city willing to pay?
The city has put forward significant resources with already 2 nourishments and the super SACs. We did get some cost share from the state. But again, this is state property. And so we are working with them on, you know, what is permittable. And I have mentioned to Lieutenant Governor that the city has not tremendous amount of resources, but we certainly would be willing to help in some capacity. But we certainly, one of the original designs with the steel pilings, they were talking about $750,000. We don't have $750,000 for a project like this that's not even permittable. So that's sort of where we are. And, you know, we haven't had that conversation yet with the state. There's been sort of side conversations, and the next big meeting is tentatively scheduled for Tuesday with Lieutenant Governor, Secretary Theoharides, and DCR and DEP and Anders, and, you know, for us to sort of hash out all of these concerns. I think if we had to add cost to extend it 100 to 150 feet, I think that would make more sense in terms of our contribution than going higher. But again, these are conversations that, you know, will be finalized with the state.
Well, if I could just ask one further question with respect to that. You mentioned that at the outset in your response that the property involved was state property, but these houses are taxpayers of the city. And so my focus is on protecting the city property and city taxpayers' property. And my question is not really in terms of how much we've spent in the past, but it's just really right now, what is it on a marginal going forward basis? What is it that the city is prepared to commit to do this? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. One last.
Yeah, Harry Fenson.
Harry Fensom, you can speak.
Unmute yourself.
I'm not sure quite how I got on there. I really have no comment.
Okay.
Oh, your hand was up. Sorry about that.
Oh, okay.
Your Zoom hand was up.
All right, I get it. Still have no comment.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
Thanks. All right, we have anything else? All right, then we will look forward to your submission next week and discuss it at the, as a notice of intent on the next meeting, April 6th.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners. Appreciate it.
You. All right, next item would be certificates of compliance and requests for determinations, but we have none this week. So can I get a motion to open the public hearings?
So moved.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
All right. So first item, excuse me, is the city of Newburyport, Upper Artichoke Reservoir Dam Notice of Intent. They have requested a continuance until April 6th. Would we like to continue to April 6th?
Motion to continue to April 6th.
Second.
I think we can do all in favor. So all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Next item is Robert Wolsick from Chemical, 7 Mulligan Way, notice of intent.
Okay, looks like we have Matt Steinell. Okay, I'm going to actually promote you to a panelist, Matt. And so you might blink out for a minute before
Yep,
you come over to.
I can unmute now.
Okay, great. Is there anyone else from your team that needs to be brought over?
It's just me, but I believe one of the applicants were planning on attending. I just can't see a participant's.
Okay, let me see if I
panel.
can find them. Would that be Jason Stevens?
I don't believe so.
Barry
There was-
Rosenfeld? Jason Stevens has his hand up. I'm just going to see, Jason, are you here for 7 Mulligan Way?
Yes, I'm here with Bob Walsick, Robert Walsick. So we're
Okay,
listening.
I'm
That
gonna
is Mulligan
promote,
Way.
all right, I'm gonna promote you to a panelist as well.
Julie, you want to demote the other?
Yes, I actually didn't promote them to panelists, so I'm not sure. Stan, no, I will, just a sec. All right, I think that should do for right now. Was there anyone I was missing? I think that's it. Okay, so let's move forward. Okay, Matt, I have your notice of intent and all the plans. If you want to tell me where you'd like me to go, if you want to give a brief presentation, I'm happy to scroll around.
Sure, yeah, if you just want to bring the plan up, I mean,
Sure.
it's a pretty basic project.
Yep.
If you just
Yep.
zoom in there to that kind of upper right-hand corner of the property.
Sure.
So for the to introduce myself to the commission, my name is Matt Steinell. I'm from Millennium Engineering. The project before you tonight is a utility project for the property located at 7 Mulligan Way, one of the Strem Chemical facilities. You'll see here in near the upper right-hand corner, just right to the existing driveway, there is a utility pole there where the overhead wires are coming onto the site from the roadway. What the applicant would like to do is to come down that utility pole and go into the ground with a 4-foot wide trench with some conduit bank and run a new service, as you see the dark line running across the pavement there, over to the transformer located at the back corner of the building there, as well as another duct bank coming in midway over towards where it says sprinkler service right there. It's all trench work. The first 25 feet of trenching is in a grassed surface. When that is performed, that will be finalized and then backfilled, loamed and seeded, and properly stabilized. The remainder of the trench is in paved surfaces in the existing parking lot. That will be saw cut, excavated to the depth that's required to install the bank, the duct bank, and then backfilled. And we have a detail on page 2 of how they'll properly patch that pavement to make it come back to a usable condition. Page 2 also has erosion control details and a bollard detail. And on sheet 1, we identified that there was bordering vegetated wetland delineated on the site in January of this year by West Environmental. And the only other resource area that we found, which doesn't exist, is the FEMA flood zone X, which is area of minimal flooding. So the only real resource area here under jurisdiction is the buffer zone for the bordering vegetated wetland. With the proposed improvements, we're expecting approximately 900, and I think it says 920 there in the corner, square feet of temporary buffer zone impact. Otherwise, it's a pretty straightforward project, all in previously disturbed areas, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that the commission has. Julie, I don't know if you've checked already, but just before the meeting started as well, I sent you the green cards and the legal ad by email, so you could have that for your record.
Okay, thank you. And I did notice also today that DEP issued the file number, which is 0511048
Yes.
for this, and they had no comments. So again, and this is because it's buffer zone only, it's a temporary impact, it's minimal project, but there is some of that temporary impact is in the 25-foot no disturb zone. Although in this case, again, because it's not a permanent impact, there will be no, actual permanent disruption of vegetation or hydrology or stormwater flow or anything like that. I don't believe that this would require a variance.
Is that the part which looks to be pretty small in the 25-foot no disturb zone? Is that already disturbed?
Well, it historically has been disturbed. Right now, it's grass lawn. It's maintained as grass lawn and mowed, and but it's I think this whole area we all know has had significant alterations over time.
So no vegetation other than lawn grasses will be need to be removed and replanted?
That's correct. If you zoom in right by where that utility pole is, you'll see there's a transformer there with a couple shrubs, and it's specifically designed to go to the side of those. And then there's the little bollard symbols there that will be installed there as well.
Is there a stockpile area for the excavation?
We don't have a stockpile area specifically shown on the plan. We can do that just on the sides of the trenches. This isn't a very deep trench. So on the side opposite of the wetland, between the pavement and the trench itself, we're talking about a 4-foot wide trench going down about 4 feet deep. So it's not an incredibly large trench. We can do it on that side of the trench. Therefore, any erosion, there should be no erosion. This can all be done in a day. But any erosion that would be occurring on that side there would have the actual trench itself protecting the resource in addition to the erosion control that's between us and the resource area.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. If you're going to be doing it in one day.
The portion that's in the grassed areas, I think, can be all completed in a day. The applicant again is here. He may have some more insight on how quickly the overall project will take. But I think that the trench in the grassed area where we have to concern ourselves most with the destabilization can be all done in a day.
Okay.
How do you think the applicant would feel about planting a couple of trees? Because anytime we get work out there and we can get some trees planted and suck the water out of the ground, we're willing to ask.
Sure. I understand. Again, he's on the line. Robert, I don't know if you want to speak up, and I
No,
can't imagine that would be a big deal.
No, we've done that before. When we did some work in our back area, we put in like $2,000-3,000 worth of shrubs in the wet areas, and they were very happy. We would have no problem doing that.
Okay.
So in the area, say directly to the right of where the electrical transformer is now shown on the screen there, we have the erosion control line. Would you be looking for something like a buffer zone or a barrier to the actual resource by putting like a facultative wet plant along the wetland line, or are you looking for just more spread out throughout the site type of thing?
Well, trees tend to do a better job, water uptake and delaying water too, there being little detention basins like they are, you know, whatever you prefer.
Yeah, but I would agree that the plantings would be best within that 25-foot no disturb buffer zone, you know, to just sort of try to give some habitat value and better buffer zone qualities to those areas. So, but like Joe said, trees are typically a little better than shrubs.
Sure. We could come up with a list of a couple different trees that would be appropriate in that environment and in that relative proximity to the resource area, and get those approved through Julia before installation. I'm kind of trying to narrow down where the commission is looking to have them placed, so I could estimate a number of plants that would be needed to cover that area.
Yeah, I think, as was mentioned, you know, to the right of the transformers, that line through there, I think it's labeled as EC.
Erosion control, yep.
Yeah, it's along in there.
And running down along the pavement where the parking area is, or just up by the transformer?
As much as you want to do.
Okay, well, that's fair.
I think what works for the applicant, I mean, you have to get that out there on site and see what you think is appropriate given that those locations. But obviously from the commission's perspective, I think I can speak for them and say the more the better. But it's anything out there would be a bonus.
Yeah.
So why don't you, I mean, Matt, maybe if you want to put together a sketch of where some of those trees and or shrubs would go and what those appropriate species would be, and send that to me, that's something that I could approve if the commission would agree prior to issuance of the order of condition.
The order, yeah. Yep, what I can do is update this plan with some plant symbols and some plant species, and I'll show them where they are. I'll run them by the applicant to make sure they're comfortable with the placement, especially considering the pavement areas and the utilities in those areas. We want to make sure there's no interference, and then we'll get that over to you.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Good.
All right. You have anything else?
I do not.
Okay, thank you. You don't have anything else? Anything from the public?
Thank you.
And Margaret has her hand up.
I think that's left over from before because she logged in twice as two people, so.
All right. In that case, do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, Paul Healy,
Yes,
roll call, sorry. Paul Healy,
yes,
Steve Moore,
Yes.
Ken Warshall,
Yes.
David Vine. Did I hear you, David?
Oh, I'm on mute. Am I mute?
David, give me a thumbs up. There you go. Ron DeCola
Yes.
and Carol Wagon,
Yeah, I'm back.
and I vote yes. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Can I get a motion to close the public hearings?
So moved.
second,
All in favor?
aye,
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Where's Steve? We just lost Steve.
Joe, do you want to just take the orders of conditions first?
Yes.
Vote on that?
I think I'm back.
Oh, there you are. Yes, you are. All right. So orders of conditions, the only one we have is 7 Mulligan Way, Robert Bolsick, Plum Chemicals. You have anything? Oh, there we go.
I have a draft order of conditions, either draft special conditions, it's our boilerplate language. I didn't hear any discussion of special conditions because it was a relatively straightforward project and they had all the appropriate things shown on the plan except for the plantings, which he's going to get to me prior to the issuance of this order of conditions. So unless anyone has any conditions they'd like to add right now, you could vote on these as is.
You're gonna reference something as far as bringing it back to the plan though?
Yes, that he has to submit a revised site plan with showing proposed native plantings within the 25-foot register.
That would be a special condition.
Anybody got anything else? Got a motion?
Motion to issue an order of conditions?
Second,
Roll call, Paul Healy,
Yes.
Steve Moore,
yes.
Dan Warshall,
Yes.
David Vine,
Yes.
Ron DeCola,
Yes.
Carol Wagon,
Yes.
and I vote yes. All righty. Next item are enforcement / violations. First one is 1176th Street. Did we not get anything yet?
We did not get anything yet, but I did hear from Tom and he anticipates it coming in for the April 6th agenda.
Okay, so he's got what until Friday?
He's got till Friday.
So
And we said we wouldn't let
I'll
this.
I'll send him a reminder.
just to refresh my memory, wasn't this due at our first meeting in January?
Yes.
Maybe in your reminder, mention fines.
Okay, I can do that. Yeah, it's an enforcement order and it's been plenty of time.
Right.
So, yep, I can do that.
Okay. And this is where I recuse myself and I am going to log out of the meeting. I will see you guys April 5th or April 6th. Good night.
Good night.
Okay, thanks, Joe.
Bye.
Okay, then the next item, Steve, you want to take over?
Yep. Next item is 5 Doe Run Drive. I believe the resident is present.
Okay, let me see if I can. All right. If you are Leon Andoni, okay, I'm going to. Leon, I've just promoted you over to the panelist position, so you should be able to unmute yourself on your computer and we can discuss the issue of the wetland behind your home. Is it possible for you to unmute?
Yes.
Okay, great. Great. Okay, so this enforcement order is, well, it's not really an enforcement order, it's a notice of violation that was sent to Mr. Andoni at the address of 5 Doe Run Drive because neighbors had indicated that there was cutting of vegetation within the wetland behind 5 Doe Run Drive. And so I sent a letter and then a notice of violation to the Andonis. And Mr. Andoni responded with an email, which I forwarded to you all, indicating that they had been removing old trash back there, parts of trampolines and things that they had found on their property behind the fence, and tried to just clean up the area. They said they did cut some of the dry branches from one of the trees, which was located in the fence. And so they were essentially doing some maintenance back there in their property, but they stopped once they realized that there was concern about it. So, Mr. Andoni, is there anything else that you'd like to add here?
No, that's all.
So I think you certainly are allowed to go out there and remove dead vegetation. And if there's, debris of,
That's correct.
metal things and remains of other structures, that's perfectly fine. But cutting any live vegetation is not permitted. And, it's kind of hard this time of year to tell what's live and what's dead.
I know. Exactly.
So I think if you want to go out there and remove any dead stuff, if you waited until there were leaves, so you could tell the difference, that might alleviate some of our concerns.
Perfect. Thank you.
But yeah, doing something this time of year, you know, you can't tell whether it's dead or alive.
It's difficult.
Yeah,
No.
and you can see from this aerial photograph that these areas back here behind everyone's homes, that these dark areas within the woodland area indicates that it's a wetland. And so it's an extensive zone back here behind these homes, and we just want to make sure that that's protected.
For sure. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, does anybody else have any comments they want to make?
No, I think as long as he's aware now that if he is going to be doing any work back there that impacts any of the wetlands or wetland vegetation, that he should talk to us first.
Right.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you, Mr. Andoni.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else got anything else to add to anything or anything they want to bring up? Plum Island?
I just wanted to talk quickly about Plum Island, if we have another minute at the end of the meeting. Joe and I spoke about this today, and so did Steve and I, and we got some emails, and we heard from Dan about the concern about this order number 69, if any of you have heard about it, with the city council, which I'm sure you have. I'm just going to give you a quick overview of the history of what happened with this, and an apology from me for the process which was overlooked. But several weeks ago, sort of early February, I received an email from Councillor Khan. She wrote to me and to John Eric White, the city engineer, asking if we had any concerns or issues or changes that we'd like to make to the stormwater ordinance or the conservation ordinance, because they were going through it as part of the city council ordinance review process, and they were making their own tweaks and changes and sort of doing what they called housekeeping. So she sent me the changes that they were proposing to make, and they were truly just, cleaning up sort of edits to language and things like that. So I had no problem with that. She asked if I had any other concerns, and I said, no, that it's been working fine. But if there was one thing that I thought was important to look at moving forward, it was development within the FEMA V and AO zones, which has continued to expand on Plum Island because of the definition of redevelopment within the ordinance, which allows for 20% footprint expansions within the V and AO zones, even though technically no new development or redevelopment is allowed in those zones. But I said in my email to her that that's a substantive issue. It's something that would require discussion. But that was just, some of my initial thoughts about changes that could be made to the ordinance. That kind of happened right before February vacation, and then got back from February vacation. What I think I didn't realize was that Councillor Khan was intending to, put this together as a proposal to the council, and that soon. And so it went in right at the end of February to the council. If I had known that, and I'm apologizing, it was my mistake. What I should have done was say, here's an idea, here's a recommendation, but it's something that this Conservation Commission needs to discuss and requires some thought and consideration as a substantive issue by the Conservation Commission. Instead, it became a city council issue. And so anyway, that obviously blew up along with some zoning recommendations that the planning director and the planning board was making. The whole thing was just process gone wrong. And so understandably, Plum Island residents were taken by surprise at hearing that changes were being proposed to the regulations on development on Plum Island, and they were right to be surprised, and obviously didn't understand what the content of those recommended changes were, because we hadn't had a chance to even discuss it yet. So the end result is that it's been sort of tabled, or I don't know what the correct terminology in the city council is, but it's on the agenda for the council meeting on Thursday night. This ordinance change to the Conservation Commission ordinance, which would, instead of continuing to allow 20% footprint expansions within the V&AO zone, it would restrict that to, you can still elevate your building on pilings and you can do lots of other things, but you can no longer expand footprint by 20%. That is just going to be sent to committee. And so that we can have, so that the Conservation Commission can have a process around whether or not that's something you want to recommend. And so that things like the data from the resiliency plan can be better presented to the public. We are also, right now, the town of Newbury received a grant from the state, which I sent you a summary of. And Newburyport has been working with Newbury on this MVP grant to look at the fiscal implications of sea level rise on Plum Island. The information and research that comes out of that project will also be really important to look at and consider in light of how our ordinance works and how the regulations on Plum Island work and possibly should or shouldn't be changed. So there's a lot that needs to happen before the city council takes up the questions of changes to zoning out there. And so I would guess that, and I think the goal is to send this to committee, which would happen on Thursday night, and then not really take it back up again until maybe the fall, until after we've had plenty of public meetings about this Plum Island project that's taking place, about the resiliency plan and other things. So anyway, that's a long background, but if anyone has any questions about it, please let me know. And again, I apologize for you having to read about it in the newspaper or be confronted about it by Plum Island residents or others. It was never meant to happen that way. And if I could go back, I would have said, no, wait, after Councilor Khan, please, this isn't something that should go before the city council right now. Are there any questions?
One of my concerns was during the city council meeting of February 22nd, there were references, multiple councilors referenced the Conservation Commission. This was coming from the Conservation Commission. And I get the whole backstory and how it happened, and
yeah.
You know, it's not a, we just find ourselves in a tricky situation now. My question is, has there been any outreach to Councilor Khan and Councilor Shand to sort of restate that in a way that, because we didn't discuss this as a commission, it wasn't, you know, so I don't want us to get into a situation where we're being accused of proposing something without holding public meetings. You know, I don't want people to think that we're discussing these matters outside of a public forum. So it would be helpful if we could get the counselors who sponsored the ordinance to make that clear. And, you know, even Councilor Zaid referenced it, that it came from the Conservation Commission as well. And obviously he wasn't expressing any support for the ordinance, but yet we're sort of getting thrown in from both sides, from the opposition and the proponents. And I don't know, I'm worried that we can be sort of seen as not the friendliest commission that you want to go before, particularly by property owners on Plum Island, and, you know, and on top of the reservation terrace discussion, you know, the protection of reservation terrace that went on, and how the objection to hard barriers was coming from Conservation Commission. Again, it's like, you know, we're sort of taking a couple of big hits in the PR department here. So I'd love to know if there's any way that, if there's been any discussion with those counselors to say, look.
There has been, and Dan, I know exactly where you're coming from, and I apologize for that. It was a question that the counselor sent to me as the staff person for the commission, and I responded by email in my capacity as the administrator and not on behalf of you. And I never spoke on behalf of the commission, but because it came from me, because the recommendation through that email, or the suggestion, I should say, the idea came from me to Councillor Khan, and she turned it into an ordinance change and presented it to the council. It was spoken of as though it came from the Conservation Commission, but it was really just a staff person suggestion. And so that was misinterpreted, and it shouldn't have been. And I do want the public to understand that this wasn't something that the commission has had any discussions about, certainly not public discussions or private discussions about at this point. Again, that it just came from me to Councillor Khan. And so we did speak about that, and I spoke with Councillor Khan and Andy Port again about that today, and Joe was on the call as well. And we're going to make that very clear at the meeting on Thursday night when they send this to committee. I'm going to talk about my role in how that came about, and talk about the commission's role in any thing related to that moving forward, which is that there would have to be a public meeting. And for anything, the city council can change that ordinance if they want by themselves. It doesn't have to come from the Conservation Commission. She didn't need me to say that in an email for her to propose that change to the council, and they could vote on it without any of our input if they like. But I do believe that it is, it is a conservation ordinance, and we are the ones responsible for overseeing it and upholding it. So any proposed changes to it should be at least endorsed or supported or recommended by the commission. And since that hasn't happened yet, clearly that would need to be a piece that would happen before this would get brought back up in the fall. And so we'll talk about that on Thursday night.
Okay. I had requested in my email to you that we add it to the next agenda. I'm not so sure that, that it makes any sense, because the city council is going to do what they're going to do. And I agree with you. They're more than welcome. They're the city council. They can propose ordinances however they want. They don't have to come and ask for our permission for it. It was just and yeah. I'm sorry that happened to you, by the way, because I know that you didn't intend for it to go.
It didn't intend for it, but it didn't happen to me. It was my mistake not to see that was a possibility. And so, I learned something from it clearly. In future communications, that won't happen.
Okay.
Are you suggesting that the council could change our ordinance?
I'm sorry, what was that, David?
Are you suggesting that the council can change our ordinance?
Yeah, I mean, we consider it our ordinance, but it's actually the city council's job to write, propose, and adopt any of the city's ordinances. And so, as Tom Hughes is fond of saying, when the city council wrote the conservation ordinance, well, the city council may not have actually written it, but they did introduce it and pass it and adopt it. And so that's how things work. Ideally, on something like this, they would ask for the commission's input and support or recommendations, etc. But that doesn't have to happen.
So maybe based on what happens Thursday night, we should or should not talk about it at our next meeting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that this gets put to the side for a while, so that we can have the other discussions that are more appropriate right now, which is looking at the future of Plum Island, looking at the data, looking at what we're going to be seeing out there in terms of sea level rise and storm damage, and looking at what's happening with Reservation Terrace and the dredge and the sand that's hopefully going to have a big impact on improving what's going on in that area. But we need to look at all areas of Plum Island and look at whether or not the ordinance and the regulations, which have been in place for 20 years now, are still doing what we want them to do in terms of protecting both the island and also protecting the residents on the island and developers and investments on the island. So there's a lot of, I think a lot of discussions that we need to have about those types of things and about the data associated with that before we get to whether or not we should make policy changes.
Okay.
And there will be public meetings. So these projects that I was telling you about, especially this Plum Island one, there will be, and I think I emailed you all about this yesterday or today, that there will be at least 1 or 2 significant public meetings to present the data and analysis associated with that project to the public. And I think it'll be really important for the conservation commissions, both in Newbury and in Newburyport, to participate in those meetings, to provide your feedback and input and, you know, ask questions and etc. So I will let you know. They haven't been scheduled yet. I will let you know as soon as they're scheduled, and hopefully you all will be able to participate.
Yeah, and Julia sent out an email today about the conflict of interest law. And, you know, you have to do that training. Set aside at least an hour for it. It's very tedious.
I can't wait. Thank you.
You're gonna learn a lot.
And you can't fail.
Oh, that's my favorite kind of course.
It's not due till the end of April, so you've got some time.
Oh, wait, and
I'm gonna need a reminder because if the end of April comes around, I haven't done it, I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, Steve or Julia, do we need to vote on that? The notice of violation for Bill Run Drive?
We actually don't need to vote on that, Paul,
Oh, okay.
because it wasn't an enforcement order, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it'll just be in the minutes that we're okay right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, for now, we're fine.
Right. Yeah.
That may
Very
change.
good.
Okay, anybody got anything else? Okay, can I get a motion?
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Thank
Good
you.
night. Have a good
Night,
night.
everyone. Bye.
You too.